Welcome back to my channel. So this is the second episode in my series on vintage lenses on medium format cameras. In my case, my lovely Hasselblad X1D Mark II and the X2D with its 100 megapixel resolution. But everything I say in this video also covers the Fujifilm GFX system cameras. In this episode I'll look at some more exotic lenses, an old 500mm mirror lens and a Russian lens known for its out of focus behavior. So let's get on with it. In the previous episode we looked at the insanely sharp Canon EF 200mm with its very wide aperture of f2.0 and built-in optical stabilization, and on the equally stunning Canon TSE 17mm tilt-shift lens. I'll link to that episode up here. As I mentioned in the beginning, we have now come to some more exotic lenses with behavior that doesn't please everyone, but it is definitely lenses with a character. The first is the Tokina 500mm f8 mirror lens from the 1980s, and secondly I'll have a look at the very praised Helios 44-2, which was produced in Russia in the 1960s, so definitely a very old construction. The Tokina 500mm mirror lens divides the users, mainly because of its background rendering. It has two major things going for it. Of course, the long reach of 500mm in a compact and relatively light body, and the very special rendering of out of focus areas, especially out of focus highlights. It is this last characteristic that divides the audience. It creates disc-like out of focus areas, also known by some called donuts, especially visible when you have highlights in the unsharp part of the background. Even I, that very often like this effect, sometimes avoid using this lens exactly for that reason. But it can be very interesting, and in some cases creates a very special effect in the background. Also, as we'll see in some of the examples, even without the highlights in the background, it can give a very special look that can be very pleasing in some images, but are pretty annoying in others. Another characteristic of this lens is that the mirror construction rarely results in very sharp lenses, and this lens is no exception. There are more modern lenses using the mirror construction, but even these are not very sharp, though of course sharper than the old construction. As I've said before, it's not always extreme sharpness I search when I'm trying to achieve a certain look, and then I compromise on sharpness to obtain the exact look that I want. In these cases, a lens like the Tokina 500mm mirror lens might fulfill my purpose. This lens can actually focus pretty close as 1.5 meters, giving it an enlargement ratio of 1 to 2.5, and it is really sharp when you go close. And as you see in my studio here, shooting these notes, it is actually more sharp than I told you. There's also detail and pretty good contrast as well, so not that bad, really astonishing. Despite the name Helios 44-2, this lens is a 58mm lens with apertures from 2.0 to 16. I used it on the first time in my younger days on a Zenit 35mm film camera. At that time I had no clue that this would become such a great lens for its very special ability to create swirly bokeh. If you haven't encountered this before, it's a really unique out of focus background rendering that only a handful of lenses can deliver. I'll actually come back to another lens in a later episode that partly has the same ability, but in an otherwise quite different lens. I have tried the Helios lens on my Micro Four Thirds camera, and on that camera it's hard to obtain the craved swirly bokeh look. It starts to appear on full frame cameras, but it is much more pronounced on the Hasselblad X cameras due to the larger sensor. At the same time, this lens doesn't display any significant vignetting, making it a marvelous performer on the Hasselblad X1D and X2D. For sure, it doesn't resolve to the 100 megapixel of the X2D, and probably not even to the 50 megapixel of the X1D. But that is not the issue here, as it provides exactly the look I want and does so much more than on smaller sensored cameras. So let's look at what the sensor size does to this image. We have the two Hasselblad X and the full frame here, and you see that you are cropping in when you use full frame, or you have to move further away, and with Micro Four Thirds even further. But let's look at a real example where I moved closer in. Here you see on the left the Hasselblad, and on the right the Micro Four Thirds. There's a lot of swirly bokeh in the Hasselblad image, but not very much in the Micro Four Thirds. Yeah, you get a little of it. It's very unique highlights in the Micro Four Thirds also, but the swirly look around the image is very visible here on the Hasselblad image. But let's look at some more image examples where I've not optimized for the swirls, but just taken ordinary photos in my daily life. Here's some plants very near to my house. This is stopped down, so not very much swirls. You get them when you use it wide open. Here there's a lot of swirls in the background on this portrait. Lovely background if you like these kind of highlights. But also note that when you move up close, it is very sharp in the hair. I didn't get her eyes sharp, but it's very sharp in the middle. So here I'm out taking images in my garden of things close up where I hope to get the swirl in the background. And you certainly see it here. And yeah, good, nice background. And also here there's a lot of swirls in the background. It's like almost in the central object is encircled by swirls. We collect water in our garden for our plants with this one. And there's not so much swirl in this image, but anyway, a good nice background blur that this lens also can give. This is a bit of tendency to the swirly background, but the distance between the subject and the background is very important to get the swirls. Here's also just a bit of it, not very much, so the distance was not right here. But in this image that you also saw me take on the Micro Four Thirds when I moved a bit back, it's very obvious. And also on this one that I also showed you in Micro Four Thirds version, where I again moved a little bit back, but that meant that the distance between the subject and the background was another, and the swirls just disappeared. But if you don't have anything in the background, well, it just seems a bit blurred, and that's everything. That's all you can see. There's no swirls here. Then let's look at the image in my studio setup, and as you can see, there's a slight bit of vignetting, but very little wide open here, and the contrast is not maybe very large. But if you stop down to f5.6 at the right, you have a lot more contrast. And also if we move to the corners, you can see that it's not very sharp here at f2, but 5.6 is very nice, and there is actually no vignetting at all. So very good sharpness. I hope you liked my view on these two adapted lenses and the images that they can give you. Images that are not possible to obtain using only Hasselblad native glass. If you did like the video, please consider subscribing, and also give this video a like. In the next episode, I'll look at two Canon FD lenses that I find truly remarkable. The Canon FD 85mm with its very wide aperture of f1.2 and the much more affordable Canon FD 50mm f1.4. Two lenses I have used on my analog cameras during many years, but also find able to give a very pleasing look on my Hasselblad medium format cameras. So stay tuned for that, and thank you very much for sitting out to the very end this time. Bye for now.